look, every film has its challenges, every story, you're always learning.
There will always be war, but to get home, Furiosa fought the world.
Out of doing these Mad Max sagas, I'm sure that as a creator, you're always learning something. So what do you feel like you learned from doing this film?
You're right, you're always learning something. Like Fury Road was an exercise in telling a story that happened in a very compressed amount of time, 3 days and 2 nights. This is the opposite. This happens over 18 years. It's a saga in which you jump in time and you see all the key characters change and age. Furiosa goes from 10 years old to 28. That was a really interesting exercise to take a long form of a story and actually play with time in a different way.
My childhood, my mother, I want them back. I want them back.
And look, every film has its challenges, every story, you're always learning. No matter how long you're in this game, you're never going to master it. You're never going to say, okay, I know everything. In fact, it's the opposite. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. I mean, you're seeing stuff on YouTube that is incredibly impressive. It's usually the younger filmmakers, I find, that are doing the most interesting stuff. Being able to make films now, it's much more accessible to most people.
Out of your Mad Max sagas, do you have a favorite?
Oh, definitely the last one.
Okay.
Because that's the one I've just finished.
Yeah.
You've heard this before, but it's like asking who's your favourite child, you know. But the last one, you know, it's the one that you've so-called given birth to, and they're all different. I think that's a really key thing, that you can't be doing the same thing all the time. Even though they're set in the same world, they have to be different in some way.
I'm Furiosa!
The darkest of angels.
The film never seems to have like a dull moment. Did it come together that way on purpose, or is it just kind of like you found your way?
That's part of crafting the story. Hopefully that starts, you know, at the screenplay stage. And then when you get into editorial, there are different rhythms within the story. Like if you took a concerto or a symphony, there's different passages in the story. But yeah, that's part of the job. Yeah.
The question is, do you have it in you to make it epic?
I love the chaos of it all. Like, there's so much chaos. And I wonder, like, how do you choreograph the chaos of it all without it feeling overwhelming to the viewer?
Well, the chaos is there, but it has to be coherent chaos. Yeah. The audience has to be able to follow it moment to moment. So a lot of that comes in the devising of the sequence, and particularly in the editing. There needs to be understanding that you can't have repetition, number one, because that becomes boring. What you've got to do is have a causal connection between one cut and the next. And also they have to be basically driven by the characters. An action scene is not just a lot of sound and movement. It's really about the engagement of the characters, what happens to them, how they come into conflict.
He took it all from me.
Who do we have here?
So I'm still learning. I'm still grateful that I still have the curiosity to try to understand not only how to tell stories, but why we tell stories. We're hardwired for stories, so I'm still learning about that. So at this stage of a film, once it's finished and it goes out, what people tell you about the film and what they make of it is really, really interesting to me, because the story only exists in the audience. It doesn't exist in some sort of package somewhere. It's experienced.